I get to come on this podcast. Heck yes. You know, I get to run my business. I get to be an entrepreneur. And there's just a different energy about that versus like, oh, I have to do this.
Hi everyone, I'm Kirsten Davidson, your host and creator of my wellness podcast, Mind the Gaps, surrendering our typical ways of looking at life to step out of our comfort zone and into our growth zone. Welcome to episode number 19, How to Thrise, where I'm joined by Kasia Sitarz. Kasia is the owner of The Clinic Health and Wellness and is a woman of many hats. She's also a transformative wellness specialist, fitness ambassador, mindset and heart coherence coach, Thrise Podcast host, magazine cover model, published writer, speaker, and TV persona. Kasia runs a well-established clinic with a desire and passion to help individuals elevate their life in health and wellness. She's also an award-winning wellness influencer in Canada and hosts retreats, workshops, and events on mindfulness, meditation, and emotional regulation. I first connected with Kasia during a local breathwork class led by our very first Mind the Gaps podcast guest, Samantha Gladish. Since then, Kasia has interviewed me on Thrise Podcast, and I've had the pleasure of attending one of her mindfulness and heart coherence workshops. In today's episode, Kasia shares her personal experiences and insights on perfectionism versus authenticity, heart coherence, how trauma is stored in the body, intuitive healing, cultivating healthy habits, and fostering meaningful relationships with others and with ourselves. For all things Mind the Gaps, you can find me on Instagram at kirsten.davidson. I'm happy to answer every single one of your questions, comments, or feedback, and most of all, I'm happy to have you as part of the Mind the Gaps community. If you're interested in booking a therapy session with me, please feel invited to email me at kirsten@mindthegaps.co. You can also schedule a session online through the link found on all of my social media platforms. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy. Good morning, Kasia. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Good morning. Thanks for having me. I'm grateful to be here.
I'm grateful that you're here. I thought we could start off with you telling us about your brand, which is Thrising. So the word thrize was something I hadn't heard before. And I'd like to hear from you, what does it mean to thrize?
I love that question because it's not a word. I made it up. And it all came from wanting to create a podcast. I was really inspired by the New Human event that I went to a year ago. And I had this idea to create a podcast. And then that was kind of the catalyst to bring it forward. And I wanted something that was going to inspire and encourage people to take their health as a priority in their life. And so Thrise, it's all about thriving and rising above. So you can see that in the word Thrise. And it really means a catalyst to creating a thriving life. And what does that look like? And, that can look very different for each individual. For me, it's really about flourishing and prospering through challenges because life is going to bring us challenges. It's not like if life is going to bring us challenges, it's really about when it's going to bring us challenges. And for me, it's like finding that resilience and that grit and like really overcoming these challenges. And so, I brought this podcast to life and I love interviewing people. Like I interviewed you on the podcast where, you've been through things and sharing that story. And then I love teaching all the things that I love about life, which is like adventure and bringing playfulness into life and, the importance of healthy relationships and moving your body and nourishing your body. And what does that look like? So these are some of the topics that we talk about on my podcast. And I took a little bit of a break. You and I were discussing this right before the show. I've actually taken a break from my podcast and being on podcast. So this is the first one that I'm coming back onto. And, the realness of that is that Man, like I've got my challenges too, and some of my traumas or past generational traumas that I'm working through as well. And a big one for me was perfectionism. Growing up as an athlete and feeling like, I had to win, I had to have it all together. As an entrepreneur, I had to have it all figured out. And the truth is, it's like, I don't have it all figured out. And I'm on this journey of life just like everybody else. And so that pause for me was because I noticed that when I was going on to podcasts, I felt like it was almost scripted. And I get why. I was on TV doing radio work and on breakfast television. For people in Ontario, you'd know what breakfast television is. And it was very scripted, or, like fitness DVDs. And I felt like if I were to mess up, everybody is watching me. And so, maybe some listeners can relate to this, perfectionism or people pleasing that I thought I had gotten over, but then you put yourself in front of a camera and on a podcast, and these things can start creeping up again. And so my pause was intentional, where I was like, okay, where is this still coming up in my life? And this is a challenge, just like, when I talk about Thrise, and how can I overcome this so that I can bring my best self forward and be truthful and authentic in conversation? Yeah.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Yay.
Yay.
Yeah. Like I said, so happy to have you. And thank you so much for sharing that. It's really beautiful. I can even feel this level of groundedness from you that feels different. It's not like there wasn't groundedness, but there seems to be another layer added. So I'm very happy for you.
Thank you. That gives me goosebumps because I feel like I've been doing a lot of work, a lot of work. And I know it doesn't end. Like this is the journey of life.
Yeah.
But I do feel like I've been doing a lot of work. A big part of what I've added into my life is emotional regulation. And I remember going to therapy back when I was like, 20, 21, 22, maybe mid 20s. And I remember the therapist explaining emotions, and my emotions specifically. She'd be like, Kasia, you as a fitness instructor, you ride a very high energy, emotional level where I'm like bouncing off the walls and I'm giving and pouring into everybody else. But then what would happen is I would crash. And in those crashes, I would feel a lot of anxiety, or I'd get really depressed. And, definition of depression could be different for everybody. So for me, that feels like a day of sadness. And I know that that's just something that it feels like for me, where I notice like, oh, I'm really feeling low. And she would see me, she's like, what would it look like if you could start to work on yourself more in the relationship with yourself and start to level out some of those emotions? And so, even you saying that, you can feel a more grounded individual, it's because I've been doing the work. And so for like anybody listening that, is working hard at uncovering unhealthy patterns, or, trying to regulate your emotions and really doing the work, and you're feeling like, is this even working? Is this even paying off? Trust me, there's moments where it just clicks and your nervous system goes, there she is. There she is, right? And you can create that new neural pathways in your brain. I've just been feeling so many different shifts, and knowing that I'm okay to be human, and, like I don't have to bounce off the walls for people to love me. And that was something that I felt honestly for so long. It was like, if I don't show people my high energy, then will they really love me? And I had to really work through that and develop the relationship, as I just said, like to myself, relationship to myself first, and really love myself first. Then I can show up like this. Right.
Yeah. So beautiful. It's so true. There's a contentment and peacefulness that comes with letting go of perfection. And then when you show up and say, I'm not perfect, other people flock too. They're like, oh yeah, I'm not either. And then we can all ironically better ourselves and become closer to a higher version, a higher level, by acknowledging the imperfections. Otherwise, we're just presenting as, yeah, we've got it all together. If we have it all together, there's no room to grow.
100%. And this is why it's so important to have practitioners and people on your team that
Mm-hmm.
you and care about you and support you and want to see you grow. So I have people on my team where they'll like check in with me, because I think a lot of people see me, and because I've been in magazines and on TV and done all this stuff and, had two businesses. Now it's kind of one business, but they would look at me and be like, oh, she's confident. Like, what does
Mm-hmm.
she need? And it's like, actually, no, I have a whole team of people that support me that I can, call up when I'm feeling like I've got to be checked on some of my emotions.
Mm-hmm.
It's so important to note that we need people around us. We need practitioners, therapists, psychotherapists, other practitioners that do body work as well to release certain emotions in your
Mm-hmm.
body. And I'm sure we'll chat about those things too.
As you're saying that you've been doing this work and acknowledging that just because you have been, we'll say, like an icon in the field, it doesn't mean that you are perfect, right? No one is. And so I was even thinking this morning of something's come up for me and okay, yeah, I'm going to book a therapy session because as a therapist, I still have a therapist. And being able to note when those stuck points, as we call them, like those roadblocks, those limiting beliefs come up, and you get more attuned to them. The more work you do, I'm sure you found that the quicker you are at noticing, okay, wait, I'm feeling that something's off because there's more awareness. So it's not that you don't ever feel off. It's just that you kind of notice it more. And then it's like, well, what can I do with that? Okay, I'm going to bring that to therapy and I'm going to explore where that comes from.
Absolutely. And you said a key word there, awareness. That's where everything starts. You have to be aware of what's going on in your system. And in this world, it can be such a chaotic world where things are really fast paced. Or scrolling on social media. I'm not saying everybody, majority, I would say, and it can be really chaotic. So how do we become super familiar with our own system? We slow down.
Mm-hmm.
That's where, breath work is really important, or regulating your nervous system is really important, because how are you going to feel what your body is trying to tell you, or your nervous system is trying to tell you, when you are constantly in fight or flight mode?
Mm-hmm.
It's just not going to happen. You're going to be, if anything, more reactive versus responsive. The responsive way is, okay, I'm noticing this in my system. I'm going to reach out to somebody to support me in that. And, there's lots of times though, where I actually support myself at this point too, where I'll go for
Mm-hmm.
a walk out in the forest and the conversation isn't with anybody else, but the divine in me. That's it. And, I share this in my relationship now. Sometimes it's like, yes, there's a lot that can be healed relationally, especially if trauma has occurred in a relationship, then
Mm-hmm.
it tends to be healed in a relationship. That doesn't mean it has to be with the same person. But what I've shared even in my relationship is I don't necessarily need to talk about everything there in that space, because there's just some stuff where it's like old patterns just knocking, testing me. And I just need to get out into the forest or drop into a meditation or some breath work, connect with the divine in me, connect with God, whatever you want to say. For me, it's like the divine in me. And I have a conversation and I put truth to what is coming up. Because if there's anxious thoughts of like, you're not good enough, or these things that have been told to me at some point, and that's why it's now in my nervous system, I get to slow things down and I get to create a new story for myself. So
Mm-hmm.
sometimes that's not, in conversation with somebody else other than myself, other than looking at myself in the mirror or bringing myself out into the forest and saying, okay, now what is coming from generational past? What is truthful? And then
Mm-hmm.
I get to choose to move
Mm-hmm.
forward. And sometimes all it takes is like a good 5-minute conversation with myself. And now what happens is I'm not bringing that into a relationship now. Now I can talk about it after, like, hey, this came up for me. But now I'm not coming into the house being like, oh my God, like you did this, you did that. And really it has nothing to do with my partner. It actually has everything to do with what I was feeling an hour ago, but I didn't process that. So now I'm
Right.
bringing it into the home. Right. And so sometimes I'm like, well, that's not fair. So let me go have a conversation with God or divine and just, work it through myself as well.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I love that you share that. And I love the language you're using of I get to have that conversation. I get to introspect. It is an I get to, like, it's such a privilege that we even have that ability to pause and introspect. And it is important to take that time. And I think for people that this isn't something that they do every day, it can sound silly, like, oh, I'm just going to have a conversation with myself. But no, we have conversations with ourselves all the time. Like, there's always the internal dialogue. So rather than letting it run the show, why not greet it and say, hang on, let's have a dialogue and figure out what's really going on, rather than letting it tell us stories every second of every day.
Yeah. Can I add to that?
Absolutely.
Because I love talking about health and health habits.
Mm-hmm.
And dialogue is so important. How you speak to yourself and the words that you use is so important. And if there's anything that I've really changed in my life, it's the dialogue. It's using words like, oh, I have to do this. Well, do you have to, or do you get to? Do you even want to do this? And then it becomes I get to come on this podcast. Heck yes. I get to run my business. I get to be an entrepreneur. And there's just a different energy about that versus like, oh, I have to do this. Like even languaging around like using the word but. I really have taken that out of my vocabulary as much as I can, because I feel like when you say a sentence and then you're like, but so and so and so, I feel like it takes away from the original thing that you said. You know what I mean? So really just looking at your languaging, how you speak to yourself, noticing that, like, are you, constantly putting yourself down? Because as you said, we have thousands of thoughts that come in every second. And it's really about just noticing those thoughts. And then what do you actually want to verbally say? Because the words that we speak out loud, it can either like rise us up or it can really defeat us, right? And so some of those words, again, it could be from past experiences, words that other people have shared with you, and now that's in your brain, or just the thoughts that come in every single day, every single moment. And we get to discern. We get to discern what we actually speak out loud.
Yeah. That is an important word, discern, right? Being able to say, hang on, it's like a filtering almost, but in analyzing first. And it's so true, the language that we speak and the language that we think. And oftentimes when we're in that autopilot mode, we'll be guilty of using terms like always, never, I am this way, not I am experiencing this feeling, and really going to the absolutes rather than thinking of, okay, I'm experiencing this right now. It's an experience, which by definition means temporary. And so then what can we do with that? Not, I am a failure. I am a bad person. I am a bad partner, whatever the am is, or the always, or the never. Yeah. So yeah, I like how you bring up dialogue, because it's so important. How we speak to others, how we speak to ourselves, and also just how we think about ourselves, because we don't even have to say it. Like if I think I am, I will be.
Well, it's like saying I am an anxious person. Like by saying that, you're claiming that, versus I'm having an anxious experience.
Right.
That can all change. And I've seen it change by the work that I do in heart coherence. I've seen anxiety dissipate completely from people. The heart coherence work has really helped people in anxiety or, feeling depleted emotions. And it's really, again, it goes back to that pause and thinking about what are you actually speaking, and just being discerning with that.
I'm so glad you brought up heart coherence, because that was one of my questions for you. Would you mind please explaining to us what is heart coherence, and heart math is also something that goes with that?
Yeah. So heart math is an institute that I studied in, and they've got a ton of research on the benefits of breathing and bringing in regenerative motion into the heart space. And so it's really about the heart-brain connection that can happen when we do that. And so they have studies showing that when you practice some of their tools and techniques, anxiety decreases, depression decreases, your focus can actually increase, you can get more clear, your intuition is a lot higher, your sleep is higher. And honestly, it's not like a difficult exercise to do. But it's just like anything, when you are riding the high, things are easy. But when you are feeling down and depressed, it's a lot harder to sit in your chair and breathe space into your heart and bring in regenerative emotions like joy, playfulness, fun, love, care, appreciation. So what Heart Math has done they've made it really simple. Really what it's about is pausing and creating coherence within your body. by breathing into your heart. So I usually start with individuals. I tell them to focus their attention in the area of the heart. And then I get them to slow down their breath. So, a count of 4 in, count of 4 out, so that we start to, tell the nervous system it's okay to start slowing down and create safety around that. And then what I would say is, okay, now think of regenerative emotion. And if people are having a challenge doing that, I usually say, like, think of an animal that brings you joy or a past experience that has brought you joy, and just bring that into your vision. And then start to bring it into your heart space. And it's amazing what we see. So we actually hook people up with technology, and we're checking their heart rate variabilities. And so just by, like, on the screen, by people doing this simple exercise, you can start to see their heart rate variabilities being a lot more balanced. So in anxiety, you'll see the graph in the chart be pretty sporadic. And in depression, it's not really moving at all. So we know we want a nice, easy flow. And so again, by practicing these tools, you start to bring coherence into the body. And what you can feel from that is what I had mentioned before. It's you are a lot more clear. You're a lot more focused. Your decision-making has improved. So now when you're going into, like, a work environment where you've got to make all of these decisions, you're not making these decisions out of a fight or flight mode, or where your nervous system is just anxious and, you're reacting versus responding. So when people are doing this work, initially what I often get is like, well, how can this really change anything? It's only like 5 minutes out of my day, but it's like building a muscle. Keep practicing it and you will start to see the changes. And that's why we actually do a baseline test at the beginning with clients and individuals that come to my workshops, where I hook them up to the technology and we see how they're operating before we do any of the techniques. Then we get them into some breathing and regenerative emotion, like focused energy. And then we see what happens after. And people are like, holy smokes, like that is what happens. And I feel better. I feel like I can breathe better. I feel more clear. And so the more that you practice it, it's like your life starts to change. I've noticed it in my own life where, I just spent 3 days with both my sisters in Turks and Caicos, and we're very different. We're all very different. And I could feel my system so regulated. So when we came up, to conversations where we're not all in alignment, I didn't feel like I needed to react. Instead, I felt like I could listen and I could breathe. And I practiced heart coherence in some of the conversations. They didn't know it, but I was practicing breathing regenerative emotions and the love that I feel for my sisters in my heart. And that created this steadiness in my nervous system to a point where they've noticed, or like what you've said, like you seem more grounded. It's this work of heart math. And, people can find this online as well. Or, I teach a lot of workshops on heart coherence. Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about it often. It's really connecting the heart to the brain. So often we think the brain is like the powerhouse. Our heart is so powerful. It can literally shift our entire immune system, and it speaks to the nervous system to send signals to the rest of our body.
I remember in your workshop, you shared that it's as if there's like a brain in the heart, like the heart has a mind of its own. And so this is so beautiful. And I so appreciate you sharing this, how this works, how it's not just, I've used the term woo woo before, but there is really research-based evidence here that it changes our nervous system. It changes our bodies, our minds, how we show up. And I love how you say that when someone learns about it, they'll think, but this seems so simple. What is that really going to do? And that's the beauty of this work, is it is so much more simple than we would think it to be. And we have all of the tools already within us. And we tend to look to lots of outside things to fix inside problems. And it's like, if we just took that time to introspect and to think about that heart-mind connection, really there's no separation between the two.
We literally have a pharmacy within our own body. Like when I did the week-long intensive program with Dr. Joe Dispenza.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, they have an incredible research team there that shows the benefit of this heart coherence work and meditation. And
Mm-hmm.
they're doing like brain scans, they're checking people's blood, they're doing stool samples, before the events and after. And even scientists are like, what is happening here? It's because
Mm-hmm.
we're activating things within ourselves because we have a pharmacy within ourselves. I'm so connected to nature and I love going out in nature, but nature is actually within us. And nature, when done right, there's a lot of harmony there. And so we actually have that harmony that wants to come through within ourselves as well. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, it's so cool to see the research and the science behind it, because you're right. It can feel kind of woo-woo, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're like, what do you mean? I'm just breathing into my heart. And then you back it up with science and people are like, yes, there's the connection.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we do have so much more power and control over our minds and bodies than we give ourselves credit for. I've never heard that term before, and I love it that we have a pharmacy within ourselves. That's so beautiful. I love it. It's so
And
true.
it's really cool what is activated in our body when we actually breathe into these spaces. And
Mm-hmm.
like there's amino acids that are released that literally mimic certain drugs that we have out there, but without the side effects. How cool is that? And like
Mm-hmm.
you said, like that's within us. We have
Mm-hmm.
so much more power. I talk about this often about disease as well. Like I see it so often in my clinic. I have a health and wellness clinic. And I see this often where people are coming in with disease. And really, to me, that's dis-ease in the body. And so, oftentimes I would share with people like, check in with your emotions because our body is always talking to us. And if something's coming up, an ailment in your body, or at this point, it's maybe a chronic disease or an autoimmune disorder, I would so often say there's a metaphysical reason.
Mm-hmm.
Just come out of nowhere. And even say that you're not eating properly. It's like, well, why? What's the emotion behind that you don't feel like you want to take care of yourself and eat well? Right.
Right.
So there's usually a metaphysical link to disease as well. And so, yeah, we have so much more power within us than I think people realize. And maybe it's coming out more and more nowadays. I don't know. I live in that world, so I see it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I get curious with people when I see people who have really tight shoulders rolled forward. I often ask them, do you experience a lot of anxiety? Like
Mm-hmm.
how do you feel about yourself that you feel like you need to crunch forward? And then now creating pain in the body,
Right.
and then they're wondering why they have digestive issues. It's like, well, you're crunching in, you're hiding. What are you hiding? Like, why do you want to hide from life so much? And so getting
Mm-hmm.
curious with that. And then, they're saying, I've got digestive issues. Well, yes, because everything is so crunched in. Of
Right.
course, the more you start to unravel these pieces, become more free, your body is it's not going to want to stay in disease.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to start shedding these layers that probably were created for years of not listening to your body.
Absolutely. I'm so curious how this ties into your intuitive work that you do with clients. And if you could explain to us what that intuitive work looks like. Before you answer, I do just want to share this really cool experience that I had in your workshop where we were laying in a meditation and you were going by people and kind of putting your hands over them and feeling that energy, which is part of this intuitive work that you'll explain. And you had said to me that there's a reason that I'm doing what I'm doing right now with the show, and that this is the time for you to finally have your voice be heard. And when you said that, I just started crying. I was like, oh my God. It felt like a psychic, spiritual connection there. When you said that, it was exactly what I needed to hear. And then in saying that, I was able to take away, well, why haven't I felt like I had a voice? And then what did I do with that? I brought that to therapy. So it's so cool, the things that you'll extract from this type of work. And yeah, I appreciate what you do and would love to hear more about it.
Thank you. The intuitive gift, first of all, I think we all have intuition. It's part of the feminine. The feminine energy is very intuitive, and, men can have feminine energy as well. And we have both masculine and feminine energy.
Mm-hmm.
Intuition piece, that came to me. I've probably been intuitive my whole life. I just haven't really known it. And when I started to feel things and see things, because that's the intuition where we can start to feel into other people's energy and into their field of energy. And so when I did the work with you, it's like I could hear things, I could see things and feel things. And I've learned to trust that. Always trust that, because I thought I was weird. I'm like, why can I see these things? And why can I feel these things? And why is it important for me to share that with people? And honestly, sometimes when I ask the question, why, I can hear the divine being like, you don't need to know all the answers. Just be a vessel. Be a vessel. And so I really had to start seeing it as I am a vessel here on this earth. And if the divine is giving me, these sights or words that I can share with somebody, if they're open to hearing, then maybe that's exactly what they need to hear. And it's kind of part of what we were saying before of, we need other people to see things in us that we don't see.
Yeah.
And to bring that forward. And then we get to discern if it's true or not. And so when I do intuitive work, I always share that. I'm like, whatever I see and feel in your energy field, I can bring it forward. You get to discern. This is just information. You get to discern what's true or what's not. And so to circle back to when it started in my clinic, was I would be assessing people because my background is RMT. So, I've got a lot of hands-on practice, but actually I didn't even need to use my hands to assess people. I could feel things in their energy field of their liver was off, their kidney was off. And I was like, hey, how do I start sharing this? And I remember it started with one client that I was working with that I really respected. And I started to share these pieces like, hey, I'm really feeling like this has occurred in your life and this is where you're going. And he's like, how do you know all of this? I'm like, I've been hearing this intuitively for quite some time, but too afraid to share it. And then hearing his reflection of that was really helpful. And you got to share this more with the world. It gave me that confidence to start using it more. And then I felt like I was actually being a disservice when I wasn't sharing it. And of course, I always ask for permission because I don't go into people's energy field, unannounced. I did unconsciously for a while. And that's why I could feel really drained at the end of my days because I was taking up so much of other people's energy instead of protecting my own energy. But then I decided, I was like, I'm going to start voicing this more. And then again, goes back to that muscle analogy. When you work something, it just gets stronger and stronger. And so it becomes this trust in myself that I'm feeling these things and then voicing it, no matter if it looks weird or not, because that it may help somebody. So that day when you came to the workshop, and it was a very small workshop, I was able to do more hands-on work and energy work with each person. And so when that came through for you, and I can remember that now, because when these messages come through, they're in and they're gone. So I don't remember. But with you, now I can remember that where it was like, use your voice. And I knew the podcast was going to be a platform for you where it was going to be very uncomfortable at times because go back to the perfectionism. And I could see you nodding your head. You're like, yes, okay. But I also knew there was so many gifts that were coming through. And I just wanted you to know that. There's so much goodness coming your way. There's, your ability to use your voice. And then the reason why you had all those goosebumps is how did she know that? I didn't. I feel like a vessel. I feel like I'm getting messages, channeling that, and then it's working through me.
Wow.
Does that explain?
Absolutely. It's amazing. Okay. It's always fascinated me, this idea of mediumship, right? You are a medium, you are a vessel of getting these messages, and then the courage to share them, right? You have worked so hard to gain that, to be like, okay, well, I am getting these kind of downloads, these messages, and now I feel confident to share them because also I'm not claiming to know, I'm claiming to have got this message. And then you, as you're saying, discern, you decide what matters, what lands, what doesn't. And maybe, I've got messages before from other people, other intuitive work that I've experienced as the client. And in the moment, I'm like, I don't really know what that means. And I write it down and then I come back to it maybe even a year later. And it was like, holy, that was a really important message, but I maybe wasn't ready for it yet. So I just think that's so amazing that you take that vulnerability and that gift and say, I'm just going to say it. And however it lands, it lands. And I mean, that's a practice that we could all adopt in our lives. When we get that download, intuition, whatever you want to call it, not being afraid to speak it into existence, to write it down, to actually ponder it rather than kind of whisking it away as some type of nothing, just a fleeting thought that must not have any significance.
Yeah. And you said a really key word there again is courage. It's having the courage to move on that as well. And even as an individual, because we are all intuitive, when we slow down enough, and trust me, when you start to practice heart coherence, you are going to start to see things and hear things before they come into existence. That's intuition. You know, you don't have the proof yet, but you're feeling something. And sometimes we don't always need to know the why right away. So there's been lots of times where I've done intuitive work, and I'll give you two examples, quick examples. One, I was working on a client. She had a lot of back pain. And so we would treat her. The back pain would go away temporarily, and then it would come back. Because this is the difference. There's an energy tie in there. There's something energetic that's in the muscle that keeps wanting to be heard or seen or felt, but we're just treating the external. We're treating the muscle. So I knew we had to go deeper. Now, when people ask me how I really do my work, I tell them the truth. I pray and I ask God, how can I help this person on their next level of healing? And then I get downloads. So it's not me. I feel like I'm just channeling, right? And so I said to this woman, she was very science-based, okay? So she's like, I said, hey, I do this intuitive work. Are you okay if I go into your energy field and feel, you know, what could be going on with your low back here? And she's like, what are you talking about? But I trust you, because now I've developed a relationship with her. And so now there's trust there and safety there. So she's like, okay, Kasia, I don't know what you're doing, but I trust you. And what we discovered was, I kept saying to her, I'm like, are you pregnant? And she was like, no more children. Don't even tell me that. Right. And then finally I was like, there is a baby that's there. And she just, all of a sudden it hit her. It was an aha moment. She goes, holy smokes. And she starts crying. She is just crying on my table. And she's like, I have been sitting with grief for so long, unprocessed grief of an unborn baby. And that was sitting. And so when we moved through the emotions of that, and she could kind of, you know, release that, I got an email that night of, I don't know what you did, but I feel so much joy and I feel lighter, because it's incredible what we carry on, or what we carry in our body from old traumas or old wounds or things that we have not processed yet. So that was one scenario. Okay. And that took courage to say that. I'm like, how am I going to tell this woman that I feel a baby inside of her? Right. Yeah. And then a second scenario, I have this woman who high anxiety, very rigid kind of woman, type A for sure. And nothing I was saying could get through to her. She was just like, I'm just here. I just want treatment. Fix me. And in my mind, I'm like, lady, I can help you temporarily, but this is all emotional stuff, right? Because her shoulders were raised up. Her chest was like really tight. And I'm like, that's like, everything comes down to the nervous system. Everything comes down to the nervous system, you know, and how we're regulating it. And then, so finally I started to talk to her. She got more comfortable with me. And I had this message in this treatment to go treat her thumb. Just go treat her thumb. That was the message. I'm like, that's weird. Nope. I'm going to ignore that. And it came through again, go treat her thumb. And so what I've learned is, when I ignore things, they will just keep showing up. So I said, hey, I do this kind of work. I don't know why. I feel called to treating your thumb. She's like, okay, well, I haven't had any injuries. And I'm like, it's okay. Like, and I kind of like played it off as, I just want to like do some stuff around your wrist. Right. So just so she was like, well, what are you doing here? Anyways, I go to her thumb and I don't know why, but I go to treat it and all you hear is pop, 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 pop. So it released, I'm telling you, 5 or 6 times. Okay. There ain't that many joints in the thumb. So I'm like, whoa. And we both froze. Both of us froze. And it was silent for 5 seconds. And then it was uncontrollable laughter, like belly laughter, like coming from the belly. Like we were hysterically laughing. And then she starts to cry out of this laughter. And she's like, you have no idea how much I needed that laugh. I'm going through a terrible divorce. And no wonder why her body was so rigid. We released that little bit of energy in the thumb. It led to laughter. And now she's crying. And now it's like, there's the release. And you could feel her whole body just soften.
Wow.
Just soften, right? So there's the gift of intuition and listening to it, right?
Amazing. Wow. Yeah. That work must be so rewarding.
Yeah, it really is. And I've had to learn how to really take care of myself
Yeah.
because when we're showing up in this world and, whether we're on TV or podcasts or, you're running a podcast, I'm doing intuitive work, like these are big responsibilities. And so with that, it's important to take care of yourself. And so it's very rewarding. And with that comes I don't stay out late at night. I don't go partying. It's just a choice because I'm like, ooh, I've got a lot to do in this world. And so for me to show up, as best as I can, I'm doing a lot of healthy habits. Yeah. So thank you. And yes, it does come with for sure a lot of self-reflection and deep healing work and all of the goodness.
Yeah. And that's so important that you do those things. What are some of those things, those healthy habits that you incorporate? Because I get asked that a lot too from clients, especially new clients. They'll come in and share a lot. And I'll feel guilt from them of like, oh, I'm sorry, I just dumped everything. And my answer is always, honey, that is my job. I'm here for that. That's what I'm here for. But I do get asked that. What do I do to unwind? So I'm curious, what are some of the things that you incorporate to create this thriving life that you lead?
I love how you said, oh, honey, that is my job.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, there's so many different health habits. I mean, I grew up in an athletic family. So, health was a priority for us in many ways. We had a lot of nature time. We didn't have like cartoons every morning. It was like get outside and, carry the wood to make sure that we have heat for the house.
Wow.
Yeah. So I think I had a really good foundation in creating healthy habits from my parents. And then there was a lot of things that I had to learn that were not so healthy from my parents. And, that's the gift of life, right? We get both. Some of those healthy habits now that I incorporate, one is my morning routine. Is super important. And that doesn't mean it has to be structured, right? It doesn't have to be like, even though I can be a structured person, it doesn't mean that I have to like get up on the right side of the bed every day, then go pour my water. And it's not like that. I feel into the day. And then what I do is I start my morning with intentionality. So I really like to sit and ground myself. And something I've been doing lately is dropping into meditation and breath work first thing in the morning. So really being mindful of, am I going on my phone right away? And then, filling my brain up with social media and what everybody else is doing and comparison and all these things, right? I'm like, wait, I haven't even gotten myself straight yet, right? And prepared for the day. And so I actually have a Belgian Malinois dog. So he's on a different energy. He wants to go outside right away. But now one of my health habits is, no, we're going to sit. I'm going to sit there and take at least 5 to 10 minutes to do a meditation, to do some heart coherence, and then set my intention for the day. Another piece to that is the gratitude piece. We hear this so often, like on social media, it's like, be grateful. And there is something to that. Thinking about some of the things that you're grateful for. And what do you want to bring into the day? So what I have some of my clients do and myself is have a journal. So right after your breath work or your meditation, whatever comes through, not from your mind, from your heart, okay? Because once you get into the heart coherence, now you're operating in the heart space. Write down some of the things that you want to see come through for the day. Write a word down for the day and don't overanalyze that. So if the word comes through like authenticity, that word just comes through you. Write it down. Don't question why, because you don't know what will show up later on in the day where all of a sudden it's like, remember your word was to be authentic, right? So that's one of my health habits, like having that intentionality and really grounding in for the day. Another one would be, and listen, like health habits, I mean, we could look at relationships, we can look at environment, we can look at fitness and moving our body, we can look at nourishment, how we're fueling our body. The other piece is getting out in nature, getting out and moving the body. If you're able to, if you're capable of moving, getting out and moving the body that we've been given, because we're not meant to be stagnant. We're meant to move and feel well. So, at least 20, 30 minutes. First thing in the morning, I'm out. And then I make it a non-negotiable that in the afternoon, I'm going out again. And talk about creating boundaries around that, and these non-negotiables. I remember because I run a business. And so I would be 10 to 12 hours straight sometimes.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. It was crazy at the beginning. And I didn't have that balance. And then all of a sudden, I'm putting in this afternoon walk. Well, that creates disruption for some people because they're like, whoa, she's taking care of herself. Wait, I need you. I have all these questions. Wait, don't go. And so you have to be really certain with what do I want to create in my life? And that was something I knew I needed, an afternoon walk. That is incredibly important to just disconnect from what you're doing and have some time to yourself or with a friend and go move your body. I would say I often check in on my environment. So what I mean by that is I look at my house environment and is there a lot of clutter? Can I organize my space a little bit better? Because for me, when there's a lot of clutter, it actually clutters my mind. And so I've been, in a few situations where I have felt really anxious. And I'm like, where is this coming from? Nothing's happened today. I don't understand. There's a lot of clutter that's not inspiring me and actually draining me. And so the minute I decide to put some good music on, declutter a little bit, make it fun, I get to do this, not I have to do this, I feel amazing after. So I think really looking at your environment is important, whether that's your physical environment, the environment inside of you, the friends that you have, the people you're surrounding yourself with, just doing like weekly check-ins of like, oh, what does my environment look like? And can I make some tweaks in that? That's a really health habit too. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing those. Those are also awesome.
Going? I was like, there's so beautiful ones.
If there's more, keep going. Keep going.
Yeah. Relationships.
Yes.
There's so many health habits around relationships as well. And it's important to look at the relationship you have with yourself, which we chatted about in the beginning of the podcast. But again, this is like environment of relationships with others. That is a big part of self-care, getting curious with yourself. Like, what triggers me? Why am I being triggered by this? And like growing that relationship with yourself is so important, and getting curious with yourself. And then relationships in general or life. To me, when I think about what makes me really feel a lot of joy, a lot of purpose, it's in connection with others. And so looking at that in my life of, do I have healthy relationships around me? And am I a healthy person in this relationship? And am I a healthy person in the relationship to myself? And if I'm not beating myself up about that, not being a victim to it, but being curious to say, where is this coming from? What help do I need to move through this so that I can show up as a better person? When my friends ask me, it's like, oh, what can I do for you today? Sometimes the answer is go take care of yourself. Because when my friends go take care of themselves, it's like, I get to breathe too. It's so important that we each individually take care of ourselves, and then we can be of service to others. Being mindful of that, checking in, working with practitioners on relationships in general.
Yeah, that's so huge. I'm glad you brought that up, because relational self-care, we tend to call it, right? What does that look like? Well, part of your environmental check-in is that you're saying, look at your environment internally, externally. Then there's the people that exist in that environment. So what relationships are lifting you up or bringing you down? And that's huge, because I've said before, you can do all the internal work you want. And if you are coming home to, I don't know, an emotionally abusive partner or a friendship, then it's not really going to go the distance. So that's really big.
Yeah. And to be transparent, I've done so much work in that area in my own life. There was a reason why I was attracting certain people in my life. We can play this victimhood of they did this to me. And yes, absolutely. And at the same time, it's what role, a good question to ask is, what role did I play in this? So, you had like Mike Elliott on your podcast, relationship coach, fantastic, him and Courtney. And like when they work with people and they talk about each person taking 100% responsibility in the relationship is so, so important. And yeah, like there's a lot of work that I've done in that area, and there's going to be continuous work, because I think that's our greatest work is in relationships. That's
Absolutely.
like, I could blast out 50 health habits right now for everybody. But the thing is really starting off with 3 or 4 things that you can shift or change in your life, and making those small adjustments is huge. That's what creates the momentum for greater success. I've had clients where I've changed their diet completely and they've lost 100 pounds, but we didn't look at the emotional side of things. We looked at the movement side. We looked at movement and nutrition, but we didn't look at, hey, what's your relationships like? Hey, what's your finances like? Is that stressing you out? What's your faith component look like? You know what I mean? There's so much more to health than just what we're eating and how we're moving. And so what I would find with these clients is that they would circle back and gain that 100 pounds back again.
Right.
Because health is not just one thing. The movement, the nutrition, the adventure. Are you having adventure in your life? Are you laughing? Are you, having some playfulness in your life? Or are you just sitting there doing all the deep work all the time? Right? You actually mentioned that at one of my events. How did you word it?
Yeah, I said this is such deep stuff, but you're so fun. So it's this great balance of there's this high energy and excitement about doing the deep work. Yeah. And I think that's a really great way to bring new energy and a new way of looking at doing that deeper work, that it's not all doom and gloom, that there is a lot of excitement, even in moments where there's tears or where there's laughter, where there's sadness, anger, there's a breakthrough happening in some way. And that's all that matters, just the breakthrough in and of itself.
It is so good. And yeah, doing this work can be fun. And then there's moments where you feel like, am I going to survive through this? Like
Absolutely.
There's moments where I'm like, releasing control. That's been part of me for so long. And I'm like, oh, I can't breathe. Like, can I actually move through this? And that's, again, the importance of having people around you that create safety, that they're not judging you on that. They're allowing you to move through that. You and I were just talking about this. You asked, oh, how are you doing? I said, there's a lot of transformation happening in life right now. And then I asked you and you're like, there's a lot of transformation happening and it's all beautiful and it's all wonderful. And it doesn't mean that it's always easy, but you can have fun. You can have fun.
Yeah. There's the depths and there's sadness with it. There's happiness with it. There's lightness and darkness, and just normalizing that whole process. Because as we're talking about this, I'm thinking of people that have shared with me that they've gone to therapy before and that they wished that someone had said ahead of time that it's not all rainbows and sunshine. And I found that interesting because I think I've also heard the opposite of this fear of it being all doom and gloom. But there is that other side of it's not always rainbows and sunshine. And it's important to acknowledge that like you will feel things, period. Things, right? And in the things, there's a lot of range. There's a huge range. And so that's pretty amazing. Just tying this back to your intuitive work, that you're able to share things that feel positive, negative, confusing. Most of the time it sounds like you get a message and it's like, I don't really know what this means, but I'm going to do something with it and I'm just going to trust it rather than trying to figure everything out. And you brought up that I've said in past about perfectionism being a thing that I struggled with. Absolutely. And you picked up on that in that moment with me. And that is something that I've let go of. So I'm saying that not completely. I mean, I'm not claiming to be a healed human. There is no final healed form, but there's been lots of progress there, lots of movement there. So we started this, I'm thinking, wow, you just seem so grounded. And then I'm also reflecting on myself and thinking of how I showed up on your show, which was only in the spring. And I feel like I'm just so much more lax, kind of relaxed into it. And I'm sure I'm picking up on your energy too here, but there's such a peacefulness in being like, we are human. Let's see where this wild ride takes us. We don't have all the answers, but we want to learn. We are curious.
Absolutely. I love that you share that, because I was going to say, can I reflect something back to you? Is like, I can see that in you too. I can see a little more ease, a little more peace, like more relaxed, which is really cool. And that's the cool thing of being allies in life, is like witnessing one another, along the journey. It's like you got to witness me and I got to witness you on my podcast. And seeing where you are now. And it's like, ooh, she's doing some good work, which is fantastic. And it's so fun to be able to witness that in one another and celebrate that. I think that is really important too, is I want people in my corner that, they're going to tell me the truth of like, hey, Kash, okay, settle down now. Your tone is a little off, right? And I also want people who are going to celebrate me. Because that's encouraging to me, where somebody notices something and then they say it. we need to speak into one another. And so what I've found myself doing more now is when I get inspired and somebody comes up in my mind, I actually send them a voice note of, hey, I was just thinking about you. This is what I'm feeling. I just want to send you some encouragement. I want to send you some support. Is there anything I can pray for you about? And then what I noticed, so I was doing that a lot over the last year. And then what I noticed was I started to feel like I need support. And then I almost put myself in the victimized mode of like, nobody's supporting me. I'm praying for everybody. Who is praying for me? And then it's like that little voice that comes in. It's like, well, have you asked for the support?
Yep.
So get out of that victim mode. And, like you get to choose as well. Hey, guys, I'm going on this podcast. Can you send me some prayer, some energy, some love, that whatever wants to come through comes through today for the goodness and the highest good for people. That's right.
I love that. To wrap up, I asked Kasia what she would like to leave listeners with as a final takeaway from today's episode.
There's two things. One thing I didn't share that's important in transformation is the power of letting go. For example, the perfectionism. And as you're moving through that, there is such an importance of letting things be and letting things go. And like even this episode, in the past, I'd been like, oh, what did I say? What's going to be on this episode? And just trusting to let things go sometimes. When you've processed, when you've talked about something, then there's a piece of, okay, let it go now. Just and then the other piece would be, and I don't know why that came up for me. So maybe intuitively, again, somebody's going through something, listening to this, and they're like, out of this entire episode, I just needed to hear, let it go. Let it be. Okay, I'm good. So maybe that's a message to somebody out there. And, our choices have power. That's a big one. Our choices have power. And so we get to choose every single day how we're going to show up mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. And so really looking at what are the choices that you're making, because we are meant to thrive in this world. We're meant to live abundantly. We're meant to be happy. We're meant to be like filled with joy. It doesn't mean we won't go through hard times, but we are meant to feel abundant. And it really sometimes comes down to what are our choices every day. If you don't like something in your life, choose differently. And yes, it can mean letting go of certain people in your life, certain environments in your life. Get a strong support team around you as you start to choose differently. You mentioned somebody in an abusive relationship. If that's you, get the right people around you and start slowly choosing differently in anything in your life.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Kasia. What a beautiful way to end, to let go and to be able to surround yourself with those people that can help you do that. Right. And looking inward and looking inward and looking outward. Who's around us? Who can we connect with? So yeah, what a beautiful way to sum up even living that life that is thriving and rising up. And in the rising up, we need to be able to pull back too before we do that. I love the elastic band metaphor of to shoot forward, we have to pull back a little bit and then we go further and then, there's more pulling back. Oh, okay. But if there's no pulling back, we never move.
100%. And remember, the work is typically done in the shadow. It's typically done when we are in despair, when we are on our knees, when we are like, I cannot do this alone. What do I need to do to make the changes in my life so that I begin to thrive? The work is done in that darkness. And then, you can really feel the light after that. You can feel that joy even more because you've seen the other side. These places where it was dark and scary, but that rise up, as you said, it feels so much more impactful and powerful and humbling.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much, Kasia, for sharing everything today and teaching us what it means to thrive. I'm so happy for you, and I'm so grateful that this is kind of your first reintegration to the podcast world. So excited to share this episode.
So much. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much for listening. If you're enjoying the podcast, I invite you to participate in a Growth Zone Challenge. I invite you to take a moment, a second, a gap in your day right now and share this episode with 2 other people. Thank you for minding the gaps with me. I'll see you next time on the journey out of our comfort zones and into our growth zones.